talk about solving quadratic equations, and that will involve page 229 in the hardcover book. And let me just do a couple of problems here to do a quick review. I think this is something you already know how to do. We've been through the hard stuff now. What I just did is the hard stuff. Now, if you'll turn to page 229 and just give me about 5 or 10 more minutes, we'll have this thing covered. Number 6. Number 6, it says y squared minus 10y plus 24 is equal to 0. Does anybody know what kind of problem that is, what it's called? Because it has a y squared in it. Does anybody know what it's called? Did y'all have basic algebra here?
5 years ago.
The Q word. Quadratic, yes. Quadratic. In other words, anything that has, any equation that has a variable squared in it is going to be a quadratic equation. And what's the deal with a quadratic equation? The first thing about a quadratic equation is it has to be equal to 0 or you can't even talk about it. It has to be equal to 0. Now remember when we're solving regular equations, we get all the variables on one side, all the numbers on the other side, right? That's not what this is. This is with a quadratic, it's got to be everything equal to 0. So step number 1 is get it equal to 0. And then step number 2, you want to guess what step number 2 is? Factor it. That's what we've been doing all day. And you've been wondering, why are we factoring? Why don't we factor? Well, now we're finally going to get to it. You may have an equation that you have to factor. And how would you factor that? Y, and what? Two numbers whose product is 24 would have to be 6 and 4 in order to add up to 10, and we want it to be a negative 10, so it would be negative, negative. And now, when you've got a product equal to 0, there are 2 ways to do this. One is the fast, easy way, and just to say, well, let me do it the long way. In case you're seeing this for the first time, what we do, we split the board in half, and we exchange one large problem for 2 small problems. What's the first small problem?
Y minus 6 equals 0.
Y minus 6 equals to 0. What's the second small problem? Y minus 4 equals to 0. And then, how do you solve y minus 6 equals to 0? Plus 6 to both sides, and you'll get what? Y equals to 6. And what do we do here? Add 4 to both sides, and we get y equals to 4. That's the long way. Shall I do it the short way? Because you don't have to go through all that. You're intermediate algebra students now. That's just for folks that need a quick review. The way we're going to do it from now on, we're going to look at this thing and we're going to say, okay, let's equate this quantity to 0. What would it be? Y equals 6. And equate this quantity to 0, and you'll get what? Y equals to 4. That's the way we're going to do it in intermediate algebra. No time to fool around with that other stuff. All right? Now, let's take a problem. I think this is going to be reviewed. Let me do one more. One more like this on that same page. And the problem I'm choosing is number 12 on page 229 of the Department Adopted textbook. N times 2n minus 3 equals to 2. All right? Now there are 2 things wrong with this. Main thing wrong with it is not equal to 0, right? And it's factored, but it's not factored in a way that's going to be helpful. N times 2n minus 3 equals to 2. What I want to do is multiply it out, and get it equal to 0, which would give you what? 2n squared, and then minus 3n, and then minus 2 equals to 0. Okay? Minus 2 equals to 0. Now, can you factor that? Oh, this is going to be one of those advanced factoring problems, right? Where you got a 2n squared. It's going to be a little bit harder, isn't it? But that's all right. We can handle it. Even this late at night. Obviously, this is a night class. What would you have here? 2n times n. And now, how are we going to get a 2? 2 times 1. That's the only way. Can you put the 2 here?
No.
No, why not? it would give you a common factor of 2, won't it? Remember? Can't go there, otherwise it would have a common factor, which we'd already taken out, because the first thing we always look for is a common factor, right? So it's not going to go there, that means the 2 has to go there, and the 1's got to go here. Make it a negative and a positive. And now, can you zero this out for me? What would it have to be? You might need 2 steps on that one. 2n equals to negative 1, and therefore n equals negative 1/2. And the other one, n equals 2. N equals 2. Any questions on that?
Where do you get 2n equals negative 1?
First of all, if I split the board in half and put in all the steps, my first step would be 2n plus 1 equals 0. And then I'm going to go negative 1 to both sides, right? Negative 1 to both sides, and that's going to give you 2n equals negative 1. And over here I'm going to have n minus 2 equals 0, and then I'm going to have to add 2 to both sides, and that's going to give you n equals 2. You see that? Sometimes you can leave those steps out, and sometimes I get in trouble when I leave those steps out. So I want to make sure this is appropriate for everybody. Okay? Now, let's do maybe...
So that's how you express that answer? Is
right. Uh-huh. Right, now, let's do one more problem. Do y'all want to do a word problem? Who wants to do a word problem? So let's do number 60 and call it quits, okay? Number 60, and we'll call it quits. Y squared, this is on page 230, I'm sorry, page 230. Number 60, y squared plus the quantity y plus 2 squared equals to 34, okay? All right, now multiply this out. What would you get? Y squared plus, no, when you multiply out the quantity squared, what would that be? Y squared plus 4y plus 4. Did everybody remember to take the first and square it? Twice the product of the 2 and the last square. That's how we square a binomial, remember that? Or else do the quantity times itself. And then equals to 34. Equals to 34. Now, what kind of problem is this? Suddenly you have a y squared problem, don't you? So that would be what? 2y squared plus 4y, and then subtract 34 from both sides, because the next priority is it's got to be equal to 0. Because it's quadratic, it's got to be equal to 0. So let's make it equal 0. What's it going to be equal to 0?
Minus 30.
Minus 30. You see that? I subtracted 30 from both sides. Minus 30 from both sides, and that's what I get, minus 30.
You subtracted 34.
Thank you. Minus 34. All right, I ended up with minus 30. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's getting late. All right, now what? Take out
2y.
the 2 first. Don't start with 2 sets of parentheses. Take out the 2 first. By the way, if you want to start off with 2y times y, that'll work, but it'll be a lot easier if you take out the 2 first. Remember, always first step in a factoring problem is take out the common factor. So we'll take out a 2, and what's left? Y squared plus 2y minus 15 equals to 0. And now we'll factor it some more. I mean, if that was good, let's do some more factoring. Y plus 5 and minus 3, right? And what about this 2 out in front? That 2. That 2 is not going to affect the answer, is it? Because 2 can't equal 0, so we don't even need to mention the 2. The 2 is irrelevant to the problem. That's somebody always asks me, can I ignore the 2? I hate to ignore anything in a math problem, but yes, you can ignore the 2. The 2 has no effect on the problem. What's the answer to this problem going to be? Y equals negative 5. Y equals positive 3. And 2 cannot equal, if you want to write something down, you could say 2 equals 0. 2 equals, no, that's nonsense. So don't even bother writing it down. Don't even put it. 2 can't equal 0, so just ignore it.